Hey guys, this is James with thegraymattersblog.com coming to you on another one of my walks through the beautiful South Texas woods. On this walk, I actually got a buddy with me, my friend Tyler. We're going to be trying a little bit of a new format, almost more podcast style, and we're going to be talking today about guns in fiction and 5 tips on how to use them to make them feel more real and more authentic. Say hi, Tyler.
Hi.
All right, Tyler. So what we're talking about today is 5 tips for guns. What's our first tip?
First tip is to have some sort of subject matter expert.
And that is super important. Now, when we say a subject matter expert, as you guys probably are thinking about movies and stuff like that, whenever they do movies, they almost invariably will get a guy with some military experience or a gunsmith or someone who knows a lot about guns to help them out. And as writers, we can do the same thing. Now, we don't always have access to these paid professionals, so there's a lot of different options. One of which is to find someone you know, either online, join a gun group, on Facebook or something like that, or, you know, in one of these writer groups, there's usually somebody who has some knowledge. There's also some other options.
And bringing that up, we have the power of the internet today, so places like YouTube can be a wealth of knowledge on this. I mean, if you have no inkling about guns, you can go to a top 5, top 10 list, watch a couple of those, and you're not only going to get the words down, the terms, and the function, but you'll also learn about some of the popular guns.
And that's really going to go a lot because that's going to teach you what people who are very familiar with guns sound like, what they call them. It's going to get you just really super kind of into the culture, especially if you're not from the culture. If you're not American, for instance, I know a lot of our non-American writers just don't have the experience with guns. And so just it'll kind of get you absorbed into it. I mean, there's some really good ones. Like he said, if you just Google top 10 guns, you'll find lots of guys. Also, something else is gun reviews, like you mentioned earlier, that they're going to review the guns, which means they're going to talk about their strengths, about their weaknesses. They're going to take them apart, put them back together. You're going to get to see them fire them. And it's just going to give you a ton of experience and knowledge that's just going to make you sound a lot more authoritative. Go ahead and give us our tip 2.
All right. Next one is going to be knowing the basic anatomy and function of what you're trying to put into your story.
And that's going to be really, really important. Know the difference between a revolver and a semi-automatic and a fully automatic and a pistol and a revolver and a shotgun. The first one that we came to mind whenever we were talking about was having someone describe putting a new magazine into a revolver. And in case you don't know, that's really wrong. Magazines don't take revolvers don't take magazines.
And not knowing the terms and functions can come out, if someone does know, it's a blatant, just like red flag that this person doesn't necessarily know what they're talking about.
Now, there is one thing, we hadn't actually talked about this, but I want to put this in here, where it's actually a hot debate on how technical you need to get. Now, you definitely want to get your basics right, but also some people are bigger sticklers than others. One of the biggest debates when you're talking about guns is it called a clip or is it called a magazine? Now, technically speaking, the thing you put in a semi-automatic modern pistol is called a magazine, and a clip is something you put in a World War II M1 Garand that's a little metal strip that has a bunch of bullets on it. Lots of people who are major gun nuts will get really, really mad if you get those two mixed up. But I'm actually I want to see Tyler's response on this. I'm actually of the camp that I think the common individual who's not a military guy, who's not a major gun guy, I think that they use those terms interchangeably. I think I am a certified gun nut, and I have absolutely talked about the clip for my Glock. What do you think, Tyler?
Well, and I think it's even going past that now, because my stepdad's in the military, and I have had him use those words interchangeably. I don't know how much that has to do with media and movies using either or just, the lines being blurred between the two. But I feel like it's getting to be less of a problem, and the only people that are really going to throw a fit about it are the trolls on the internet, which it will happen.
So just something to keep in mind, that's one that you probably want to get right if you can. I don't think it's a huge deal, but if you get it wrong, there will probably be some troll who will say something. Let's see. Okay, we're going to tip 3, which is make sure you talk about the gun adjacent gear that's not a gun.
That can give you a whole lot of information not only about how this gun is being used in the current format, but also about the person, whether they're, concealed carrying this certain gun in this certain holster. That, that kind of shows that they're trying to fly under the radar and, not be seen, not make a statement. Whereas if you have someone who's, rocking a Dirty Harry revolver on their hip, that stands out. That definitely makes a statement.
Well, and it tells you a lot about that character and who they are. The, soccer mom who carries a 380 semi-auto in her purse is way different than the guy who carries a shotgun in a thigh holster. And that tells you two very different things about these people in these very different situations. Another thing is what the gun is capable of is largely changed by what kind of gear you have, because we can take the same weapon, the same pistol, and if I'm carrying that in a highly concealed under the shirt shoulder holster, that gun is a very different weapon than if I'm carrying it in a quick draw holster low on my thigh. It completely changes how fast I can get to it, what I can use it for, and it just makes it completely different, and it has nothing to do with the gun.
And it also helps to set your scene. It's not just the holster. Is this guy tacked out with a ballistic vest and plate carrier, a helmet with night vision goggles? That helps to kind of build the atmosphere, and it helps to tie everything in.
So going on to tip 4, we're talking about that one of the things that will really help you write guns better is to read authors who write them well. One that comes immediately to my mind is Larry Correia.
Larry Correia does his guns very well. He does the details very passionately, but it's not overused. It's not, he hasn't spent 3 pages talking about the small parts and pieces on each gun, but he's very knowledgeable, and it comes through in his writing.
I guess what we're trying to say is he does a good job of explaining it without making it gun porn. There are guys who write gun porn where it's just literally a guy drooling and spending 5 pages talking about how he customized his M4. And Larry Correia, something else he's really good at is he tells you a lot about his characters by what they choose to carry. He has 2 series that come to my mind immediately that deal with this really well. One is Hard Hunting, Hard Hunting. That's one of our series, which you should check out, by the way. Hard Magic, which is a kind of 1930s film noir with magic and detectives and really super cool. And he tells you so much about the characters by what they carry. Same thing about his Monster Hunter International series. One of the things that comes to mind is one of the main characters is this big, burly guy, and he carries a fully auto shotgun.
And he seems to do that in a lot, or almost all of his books. I mean, Dead Six, the main 2 people of his stories carry very different guns for very different purposes, and that fits perfectly into their personality.
Including he works their personalities and their character development and traumas into their guns in a really cool way. One of the characters at one point is too slow to protect someone who dies, and because of which he begins obsessively practicing quick drawing his revolver, which ends up being really pivotal in the final scene of the book, where he literally, someone has the drop on him, has him at gunpoint, and since he can draw in, literally under a second, he's able to shoot the guy who has him dead to rights. So he works it in really well and makes it a part of the story. Another guy that I think does a really good job is Tom Clancy. Now, Tom Clancy is definitely coming at it from more of a military perspective. Larry Correia is a civilian. He was actually an accountant for a mercenary company, which is super cool. But he's
weird flex.
But he is a civilian, whereas Tom Clancy's a military guy who writes a lot about the military, so we tend to see more military weapons, but he writes them extremely well, and they always feel like they really belong where he puts them.
The next thing we're going to move on to is the gritty reality of guns, and that can be actual grit. One of the important things to remember is that these are machines, and they have the same problems that any machine will have. They're going to have jams and malfunctions. They're going to run out of, say, ammunition, and talking about them having to change the mag clip interchangeable, however you feel. helps to also drive that home and help you write these guns and gun scenes really well.
Exactly. And to expand on that, I mean, there's so much of the gritty realities that guns jam, guns get dirty. One of the things is that, and I, except in some of these authors we just talked about, I can't remember the last time someone talked about a character in one of their books cleaning a gun. And if you don't clean your guns unless you own a Glock or an AK-47, those you can get away without cleaning, I guess. But then that's also a thing about that also tells you a lot about your character if he owns a Glock or an AK so he doesn't have to clean it. This may tell you something about my character and about me personally and why I own a Glock, because I don't like cleaning guns. But cleaning your guns, as he said, reloading, actually remembering the fact that you can't just shoot forever, the fact that guns jam, and the fact that a jam can be a really cool, bad situation to put your protagonist in.
That's actually, I follow a lot of the police instructors and military instructors, and clearing a malfunction is one of the pivotal points that they teach to actual people who are going to be in gunfights. So that is a minute thing that can make a big difference.
And can literally save someone's life or cost someone's life. Having a bad guy who has a malfunction at the worst possible moment can be a great Deus Ex Machina for your character. It can also be a way to screw your main character if you need to add some tension to the story. So, all right, guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. I really appreciate you guys joining us on our walk. Let me know if you liked this kind of more podcasty format where we have a little more back and forth and I have some guests. I would really love to do this some more. If you guys came here from Facebook, make sure that you go ahead and log into your YouTube app and like and subscribe to the video. It can be a little hard to do it if you're doing it through your browser, and that way you can actually support us. It helps us out a lot. We are passing over this tiny bridge right here, but since it's me and Tyler together, who are famous for getting into trouble, I figure if the trolls bother us this time, it's their problem. I'll join you guys on my next walk.